great firm. You laugh. I get that a lot. We have a really great firm and we're doing wonderful stuff. What's different? Well, you know, we just hit $2 billion in assets. Oh, okay. There's some change. We just hired a top-notch money manager who is going to bring a whole new discipline to the firm. That's change. We just, you know, you can think now, you can think of all sorts of things that constitute a shift in your business. You know, I just ran into a client this morning and he said, we just got a new mandate from an automobile company. That's change. You know, they just landed something like $150 million mandate. And so, and if you can talk about that sort of thing, that's the kind of thing that marks milestones, that marks progress. The same thing you require from your companies. If you're investing in equities or fixed income, what's different? You know, are you meeting your milestones? Are you hitting your goals? Are you hitting earnings? I mean, that's what you look for in the market all day long when you're just basically discounting cash flows. The same is true when you're talking about your business and how it has changed and how it is evolving and how it is getting better. Performance is always nice, but be careful. Performance is a double-edged sword. As a former financial writer and somebody who writes rather still about this, I used to always hear from the money managers who would, you know, they'd put up a good one-year number. And all of a sudden they kick out a press release and they expect me to write, you know, this is a person who has a good one-year number. And as a PR person now, I am not going to show that story to a journalist. You're going to have to find a new guy to do that. I will show a story of a hot one-year number, a really good top decile 3-year number, and maybe a 24% 5-year number, because that I can promote as an ongoing story. But the last thing I'm going to do is go to a journalist and say, hey, they had a really great year. There was a guy named Lee Kopp. Remember Lee Kopp? Anybody remember Lee Kopp? He was a position broker at Dane Bosworth. And he tonned it in technology stocks. And he got more tremendous publicity because he was just burning up the tracks. But then all of a sudden the tech bubble burst, as did Lee. And you know, there's an old saying, you meet journalists 2 times in your life, on the way up and on the way down. And Lee met everybody on the way up, and he also met everybody on the way down. There is no story that journalists like doing better is to find some hot stock picker who all of a sudden watches his portfolio fall into 100 pieces, and they like to write that story because they were kind enough to write the story on the way up. And then when you got to the top, they won't talk to you. They won't talk to you because they're too busy batting away all these assets that are coming at them. But you know, there was a guy named Worth Brunson, who is now, he died a few years ago, but he was a hot money manager for Piper Jaffray. And Worth was on the cover of Money magazine, and he was on the cover of all the local newspapers, and nobody, this is when I was writing a column, nobody explained anything about dispersion of returns to the journalists writing about Worth. I never wrote about Worth because I had somebody who liked me, and they explained to me that when you have a government securities fund, the standard deviation among returns for most government securities funds is about 25 basis points, plus or minus. Worth was outdoing his indices, his benchmarks, by 300 bips. Now, do you think he might be taking some extra risk? And when Worth blew up, Piper pushed him away, and they wouldn't let him talk to anybody. Having said that, in 1994-95, the Piper Jaffray Government Securities Fund set an all-time world record for negative press, appearing on the top right-hand column of the front page of the Wall Street Journal 2 successive days in a row. So if you want to know what it's like to job a reporter and to job the market, try doing something like that. And I've never seen a hellfire storm befall a company like it did Piper Capital when Worth went down in flames. And there were, and the interesting thing about it is that there were people here in town who knew about it. Lots of people in town. And what would happen, I remember what happened is that I talked to a money manager who worked for, who did he work for? Who's the former? Al Dubiak at U.S. Bank. And this money manager said, I was running money market funds. And whenever we'd get a piece of crappy paper, we'd show it to Worth and he'd buy it right away. Whenever I wanted to clean out my portfolio and I had something, if somebody had told the journalist that journalist would have worshipped that money manager for the rest of his or her life. And that's the value of good information. Oh, did you see this word unique? Never use that word. Never use it. Unique means that there's nobody like it. That it means I have something that's unique. The Mona Lisa is unique. Your asset allocation market model is not unique. It will never be unique. Your Monte Carlo construct is not unique. I'm sorry. So if you tell a journalist that you are unique, you are putting a target on your back. Not with a slash through it, but with a big red dot in the middle. I alluded to this. Always think Minnesota angle. You're going to have to be able to say it in 750 words. And why is it pertinent here? I worked with Jim Euland at Euland Capital Management, and he knows this inherently, instinctively. We did a piece on sovereign wealth funds, and we did a piece on trust preferreds. And trust preferreds were really hot, and he knew enough to say, here's why you want to avoid them, here's what you want to look for that is risky in them, and then here are some of the local companies, banks, that have good trust preferreds that we have analyzed. And he hit the cover off the ball because he was willing to be local, he was willing to discuss both rewards and risks. And why, he put himself into the shoes of the investor. What should you be worried about? What could go wrong with these investments? Now, in saying that to the investor, you're not opening up necessarily a black box. You're telling them, I know what to look for. They're not going to go out and pull these securities apart, but they want to know that you can do it. And then finally, they want to know if there's something here in Minnesota that they can invest in. It's very, one of the things that distinguishes Minnesota investors is that they really like to be able to walk up to a company and say, I own this company. We have really, people here love living in Minnesota. They have a great deal of pride in their state. And to be able to own a piece of their state business climate and their business community is important to them. And that's why you see such a heavy-duty emphasis on local angles here in the state. And know this, news holes are getting smaller and smaller every day. It's unfortunate that the Star Tribune is getting thinner and thinner. Online advertising is taking over print advertising, and it is a trend that is not stopping. It is not going away. And so as a result, you're seeing thinner newspapers. And so what used to be 1,000 words that you could print in a newspaper is now 750. And so you have to be willing to be really succinct and to the point. And that's it. Tell the truth, answer the phone, answer the question, and you'll be fine. Questions, comments, concerns? Am I full of it?
What about
yes.
kind of etiquette after you talk to the media, after something is printed? Is there an expectation of circling back to the reporter, or
Good question.
leave the line open?
Generally speaking, a call afterwards, let's say the best call afterwards is that they don't use anything that you say. Call them back, say, hey, thanks for calling me. Obviously, I probably didn't give you what you wanted, or maybe you ran out of space or time or whatever, but feel free to call me again. I had one financial planner call me once in a rage and tell me that, why didn't you use anything I said? And I explained to her that, what she had said was not really on point, and so forth and so on, and I'm a vindictive SOB, and she really, really reamed me for not calling her. I never talked to her again. I had given her a lot of publicity up until then, and because you don't have a divine right just because of talking when you're talking to the media. You don't have a divine right to be in there. They might use one sentence, or they might find what you said to be absolutely fascinating, and they'll run it on and on and on with stuff that you said. But always call back. If they get something wrong, there's a very distinct code of reporters hate to look stupid. If it's really, really wrong, then you say, I'll give you an example. One of our clients is Famous Dave's. We do investor relations for them. And once upon a time, they wrote an earnings story, a fourth quarter earnings story number. And they took, this happens all the time. You got, especially in earnings season, I used to do 5, 6, 7, 8 earnings stories in a given day. And so you're really scrambling to grab stuff and pull stuff together and talk to companies. Well, he used the fourth quarter number for Famous Days rather than the full year number when he intended to use the full year number. And I called him up and I said, hey, just want you to know for future reference that you use the fourth quarter number rather than the full 12-month number for the company. They really did, 180 million, and you had them at